So I am going to talk about 5 key areas of VAs. However, I also did a TED talk on this. So I'm aware that some people will have heard that and some people won't. So I'm going to say some of the same stuff. And also I want to make sure that I'm sharing new things with the people that have already heard that. So some of the new things that I'm going to share, at some points I'm going to share my screen and share materials and ideas and guides and things like that to hopefully help. So let's get straight into it. So if you don't know who I am, I'll just quickly tell you. So hello, I'm Jess. Happy to see you all. Hello, thanks for the voice back. So I've been working in property for about 3 years. I've done a couple of renovations on my own homes, and I've got a small number of HMOs. But alongside that still, and historically, I've worked for 15 years in marketing, from massive global organisations to tiny startups, which is where I am now. And so what that means is I've worked with loads of different teams, trying to work on one vision, trying to pull together loads of different component parts of people trying to do one thing, whether that's a product launch or an event or blah, 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 which means I've had to get really good at clearly explaining what we're trying to do to a lot of people who are coming at something from a different perspective or base level understanding or whatever. So hopefully what that's allowed me to do is be able to bring people along to what I want them to see and what the common goal and objective is. So hopefully my slightly anal attention to detail and control freak nature will have set me up quite well for working with VA. So I hope that I can share some of the things that have worked well for me. So as annoying as it is that I can be a massive control freak, it's actually really helpful too. So as I say, I really want on this session to share with you my approach to how I work with my VA and how I get hopefully the most out of her. And then, as I say, let's all kind of share from each other. So the first thing, I haven't done slides. I started to do slides and I thought it was a bit too formal for our group, so I scrapped them, but I will share my screen, as I say, at different points. So the 5 things that I'm going to talk about. Sorry to show my boobs. I'm just going to open the chat because I should at least be able to keep an eye on that. So the 5 things that I'm going to talk about are what to outsource to somebody, and that's going to be probably where the most discussion is going to be. Then how to choose who the right person to outsource that stuff to is, whether that's someone you have an ongoing relationship with or a short-term transaction. Then how to, assuming that you're going to be working with a VA, how to onboard that person, how to work with that person in terms of different systems and communications. And I know the team at BV did an amazing systems mini-series last week. I think you did it, guys. So I'm sure you'll have loads to share at that point as well. And then finally about compensation, reward, remuneration, etc. So in terms of what to outsource, I've started here because obviously when you know what you want to outsource, that will completely change who you outsource to and how you need to work with that person. So I've got this really annoying thing where my computer, I've got a double screen set up. What I need to look at and where I'm recorded from are different, so it's really like annoying. So for today, and in order to demonstrate some of my point, I've made something which I want to share now on my screen, and I'm going to just quickly start a bit of conversation around what we all outsource. Share screen. So this morning, I made this. Can you see that? Can you see my lovely little infographic? Can you give me a thumbs up if you can see it? Yeah, great. So this morning I made this. This week I've learn the very basics, as you can tell. Don't judge my lack of design. I've learned the basics of Canva this week. So I've been teaching myself how to make marketing materials. Obviously, I've got a bit of a way to go using Canva. So I have here 5 different areas. So I work with my VA on about 7 different areas of my business. These are 5 of them, and these are 5 different areas, 5 or so tasks that she does for me, of ideas that I can get her to work on. Now, the first thing I want to say about this, I will share it. Don't feel like you need to screen grab it or scribble it if you want to. I will share it I'll put it on my site and share it through my social Insta later today when I've actually made it look a bit better. But the first thing I want to say about this is when I did this, I recorded my screen, and I recorded my screen and I created a video of me doing this for the first time, so that not only was I making this beautiful piece of branded marketing material, but I also created a training video to show Mary how she can do that too using Canva, how she can apply my brand colors, how she can get copy, blah, 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 blah. So this is 5 areas of what Mary does for me. So, and I'll come back to the video thing when I talk about how to work with communication methods. So I work with Mary from an administration point of view. She helps me get rid of the clutter in my brain that fills up my time. So she does my email management. She plans all of my networking. She tells me on a monthly basis what's coming up that month and what the topics of those things are. I choose what I'm going to go to and get rid of the rest. That's a typo. She does alerts for actions. No, it's not a typo. She does alerts for action. So if things have come into my emails and I need to manage them, she will alert me to them via one of our comms platforms. She does my filing. She does my CPD logging to make sure that my accreditations stay live. From a property management perspective, she helps me improve my efficiency. So she, thanks guys, first go. So she researches utility tariffs for me at agreed intervals. She's just started doing this. I've just briefed her to do a little house tracker in terms of when the certifications are expiring, when the mortgage rates are expiring, and just like a little maintenance and alert tracker for me. She's the first point of contact for the letting agent communications. That's through my email. So she has my logons for all of my property emails, and she will respond to the letting agents before me. She will source like lamps and stuff like that, or whatever I need to get. Can I share my tracker? Yeah. And she helps me manage invoicing in terms of alerting, filing, checking that they are reconciled. In terms of property finding, so she has my right move criteria, and one of the first things that I got her to work with me on was I taught her what I'm looking for in a property, and I shared with her Jonathan, I can never pronounce his name, Jonathan Wanu's HMO guide with her of his website, and I taught her how to understand how you can get an HMO out of a house, and I gave her the HMO regulations documents for the different areas that I invest in, and asked her to learn them, because if I can learn them, she can learn them too, right? So she knows what room sizes are required, what communal area requirements there are, etc. So she knows how to look at first street, then the floor plan, and then the pictures last. She knows how to look at a property. So and I'll show you how we communicate from that, as I say, later. This is just ideas. So she scans Rightmove, she shortlists the properties for me, and we have a little system of how we track those. She looks at auction dates for me and flags them to me. And as we all have a million sign-ups to loads of different mailing lists, she'll go through and check that I'm not missing any properties I should be seeing. On a finance perspective, she reviews my monthly rent statements. She does my bill reviewing and filing. When we got set, I'm in the process of working with her to get me a bit more automated on the finance side, which is proving a bit tricky. And I'll talk about that. But she researched the right apps for us to use together to help me manage my receipts and online management of that a little bit better. And she does my monthly reconciliations, because at the moment my P&L is done. I'm in the process of moving from Excel to Xero, so she's been doing my monthly reconciliations. And then the fifth area that I thought I'd share of what we do together is marketing. So she has been doing a very basic CRM tracker, and thank you to Nat Gascoigne for sharing that you use monday.com for CRM tracking. That was amazing. And also to Alexandra for sharing your Airtables with me this week. So I think we can learn from each other, loads better systems there. So Mary will help me move over to one of those. She knows how to, I taught her how to contact the right department at the councils to get landlord databases, and then we drafted an email together. She does mail merges for me and just sends me the letters as a file to print, stick and send. She's in the process of getting a branded mail template for me so I can do more regular comms to investors. I've just had some of my branding redone, so I've just trained her how to use my PowerPoint document and my Word template. So she's created a really nice piece of marketing for me this week. That's on my win list for the week, because I trained her how to use my branded template. And also, she can't do everything, but she obviously has a whole network of VAs that she works with in the Philippines. And if she can't do something, I've had to train her not to give me back the problem and say I can't do this, but to find a different way to solve the problem, which is to find somebody else who can. So there's some of the things that my VA does with me. And I will, as I say, share this later. I don't know I think what we'll do is, I think if I open it up and say, let's talk now about all the things your VA does with you, that could be the entire call. So I'll leave some time for us to do that, unless you've got a burning something that you want to share now. But otherwise, let's share ideas after. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. So that's to give you some ideas. So I knew from this that I wanted to have somebody who worked with me, who understood how I work, who understands what my company's trying to do, could understand, the processes and systems. So I knew that I needed a VA rather than someone to work with on a task-by-task basis. So that helped me decide that I wanted, there we go, just stop sharing my screen there. That helped me decide who I wanted to work with. But then when I started thinking, what kind of relationship do I want to have with this person, I knew that I really wanted someone in my team. I don't know about you, but I'm very much somebody who, relationships are really important to me. People feeling part of something is a really good motivator for me, and so for many other people. So I wanted to create that. So I knew that I wanted to work with someone to have a relationship with in my team. So I knew that that was a criteria for who I should look for. And it was actually really hard. I outsourced the finding of my VA, as many people have in the same way on this call, to a VA sourcing company. And when I was looking at the CVs, it was actually really hard to choose, because some people had some of the skills and others had others, etc. So I kind of filtered out what was going to move me forward fastest and pick those skills. And then I thought, after I met those people, I thought, do I want someone, and I've shared this with a few of you, do I want to work with someone who is part of my team, me, who I can have a relationship with, or do I want to have more of a transactional relationship with this person? Because that will help you choose, if you're looking to hire someone, who you choose. And I know I've been having conversations with someone about that this week. Do you want a relationship, or do you want a transactional type exchange with this person? Because that will totally impact the type of person that you then choose to work with. That said, I know that I wanted to work with someone ongoing who could grow with me, but there are things that I don't need Mary to do for me all the time. So for example, I just had my branding, I mentioned that I just had my templates changed, my PowerPoint and Word documents. That's a one-off task that someone who doesn't know me, doesn't need to know my systems. Yeah, that's perfect timing, Claire, on that question. So I just had my document templates recreated. That's just a one-off thing. So I happen to know that there are a few platforms that exist which are specifically for people with design skills, and there's the same situation for people with accounting skills or random data skills or data scraping, whatever. There's specific websites that you can go to find people to work with you on a one-off basis for these kinds of tasks. So yes, Louise, the answer is yeah. So for things like anything design related, I had my PowerPoint done by a PowerPoint designer in 99 Designs. And 99 Designs is a platform which has caused a little bit of controversy because of how it's structured. So what you do on 99 Designs is you put your brief, you write a brief, you put it on the platform, and people basically pitch for the work. But in order to pitch, they have to do the work. So they will say, here's how I would answer your brief. If you like my design, pay me for what I've just shown you. And you might get 5 people who do that, which means 5 people have done the work and you're going to pick one and pay them. And it's a little bit, some people think that's unethical because it's kind of commoditizing creative design. It's also really helpful. The flip side of that is, you know, you're paying for something from someone that you've never met before. You don't know if what they're going to produce is going to be awful or good. So what I've done is I've found somebody through that pitching process once, and I've repeatedly gone back to that person. So I now only pay for, you know, I only see what I've already paid for. So so that's Claire, to answer your question of how do you work with a VA when you don't need regular jobs, I think it depends what they are. So if you need design task, I would Google the task that you want and say outsourcing data scraping, outsourcing PowerPoint creation, outsourcing whatever, or virtual skills data scraping, virtual skills, whatever, and just put that into Google and see what platforms come back, see what ratings and recommendations come back for that platform and reviews, and then just have a go. And I've usually started someone on a small value task first and then increase their scope once I can see that I trust that person. Another platform that I've used for design type things is just forgotten it, Fiverr. So but if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see that I've also had some pretty crap creative from Fiverr as well. I think 99 Designs is much better. Right, so so we've just talked a little bit about how to decide if your task is an ongoing relationship or a one-off task. The other websites that you might find quite useful for one-off tasks are things like People Per Hour, or there's a lot of, if you want to have somebody who's quite cheap on resources, quite a cheap resource, then you can use like onlinejobs.ph and places like that. But I think that for me, I particularly outsourced mine through an agent because I wanted a level of standard verification, and I wanted to know that somebody had reviewed their standard of work and skills before I started working with them ongoing. So I'm just going to see if there's anything else that I want to say about choosing between a VA or a task doer, and then choosing the relationship versus transactional type way of working with somebody. I think that's it for that. Then in terms of how I then onboarded my VA. So I'm going to talk about firstly how I onboarded them, and then how me and Mary work together ongoing. I'll share my Trello with you. I'll share some of the briefs that I use to ask her to do work. So when I started working with Mary, I basically thought about the fact that she was effectively starting a job with me. She works 2 days a week for me, there or thereabouts. And although it's not on fixed days or fixed times, that's a large chunk of her time. and I want her to grow with me, and I want her to understand what I'm trying to do, because I believe, again, that when somebody understands their role in something, they're more likely to be more effective in doing it, because they understand the impact of what their work will have on that overall objective. So it was really important, in the same way that many of us have managed people in the workplace, I wanted her to feel connected and motivated in exactly the same way. Just because we only communicate via a screen, I wanted her to have that, to benefit me and motivate her. So the company that I worked with, by the way, is called The Freedom Geek, and if anyone wants an introduction, I will give you one. It costs about £400 to source a VA and go through the application process, and then you pay your hourly rate of VA. So the way that if you can imagine for a moment the last time you had a job, assuming that everybody on here has had a job at some point and hasn't always worked for themselves, if you imagine on your first day, what did you do in that job? I know that I spent a long time in my first days on my first job going through meeting people from different departments, which obviously isn't relevant here. I went through the filing systems. I got to learn I went through the deck of, effectively a pitch deck for that marketing agency, what they would say about themselves to other people when they were starting to work together. I went through the clients that I was going to be working with, and basically just tried to acclimatise myself with the systems of that organisation, the different tools I would need to be using. And I had a full-on week of inductions usually at the businesses that I've been working with. So if you're thinking of starting to work with a VA, when you actually sit down and start, think to yourself, what do they need to know about me, what I'm trying to do, and how I operate, in order for them to effectively be an extension of me doing that. So when Mary started with me, I created an overview. I gave her part of this. I took elements of what I already had, which was a bit of a strategy document, a bit of an investor proposal, a bit of my marketing materials, and I put them all together to give her an overview of what I'm trying to do and what her role in that would be. And I spent quite a long time over several calls just getting her used to what those things would be. So again, as I say, just think about how you can make that person feel like part of your team. That took time, and I think that one thing that we must all be really mindful of is, to get a VA working effectively with us, we need to invest time in that relationship, because a VA really can only know as much as we're prepared to show them in terms of us. Hopefully they're bringing to the table their skills and capabilities, but in terms of how they apply those to us, they can only be as effective as we give them the time to be. So I did spend a couple of days preparing for my VA to join, and when he joined, I haven't had a sex change. I had a different person. And I'll just flag a bit about that actually. But when Mary became my VA, we spent several calls going through things. She had questions. We did the same content twice, maybe 3 times, just to get her on board. What I was just saying about the guy was, I actually had somebody who started with me, and he invested time going through this onboarding process, and he started to produce some okay work for me while he was getting, you have to expect to start with, it's not going to be perfect. And then after about 3 weeks, maybe 2 weeks, he kind of said, I'm really sorry, but the company that I work with for the majority of my time has asked if they can increase my hours, and I want to stay loyal to that company. Loyalty was a trait that I looked for, and so he had it, but it played against me. And he said, I'm gonna I've worked with them for a long time, I'm going to increase my hours with them. So I'm really sorry, I won't charge you for the work that I've done because you've wasted your time, blah, blah, blah. Whether that was him being nice and actually he just hated the idea of the job, I'll never know. But anyway, so I went through that process twice to get him first and then Mary, and that's okay. Interesting seeing what people are using this time for. I'm going to have to go through all of that after. Yes, definitely create the best things that I've used are things that the VA can come back to in their own time. So maybe a video, maybe a document, maybe a website, maybe some industry context, just to help them get on board. So that's what I did for onboarding Mary, and I asked her how she wanted to communicate and when she wanted to work, because I knew that I had a certain amount of hours to give her, but it doesn't really matter to me, except for specific deadlines, when she does them. So just, again, really respectful of what works for her life, because hers is only part-time around her daughter, work, blah, blah, blah. So we agreed not only what we needed to do together, but also how we were going to do that, when we were going to do that, what our expectations were around working together, how we were going to communicate, when was okay to communicate and when wasn't, etc. So that's what we did. How did I do due diligence on my VA? And are they exposed to sensitive data? Okay, so the due diligence on my VA, because I went through an agency, I kind of interviewed the agency on their processes of how they do due diligence on their VAs overall. So I was happy that they did certain level of skills tests, attention to detail checks, etc., and after being comfortable with that process, I then interviewed three, like I would have with a normal job. I interviewed 3 VAs and just asked them questions that showed skills and also what was their level of initiative. Because whilst I do expect that when I'm working with a virtual assistant, actually this is something I definitely want to say, whilst I'm working with a virtual assistant who's basically, their role is to take tasks from me and return the output for that task, I did want someone with a bit of initiative, so I asked questions that would show that they had some initiative of their own. The thing that I wanted to say was, I've had conversations with some people here recently about the type of person that you want to have working in your team. So this is going to sound like a massive generalization, because it is. So forgive it, but if you want to work with someone who will take the initiative, assess your business and come up with suggestions and ideas of systems you can improve and design those for you, I have known that to be less common in working with a Filipino type virtual assistant, and I've known that type of skill set to come much more from a UK based or professional virtual assistant or executive assistant, not somebody who is using their very valuable skills to fill time and income gaps around what they already do, and perhaps being a VA isn't their profession. The dynamic between from, as far as everybody, correct me if I'm wrong and share if you've got a different experience, but the dynamic that I'm aware of between somebody like, for example, us, a UK-based employer, and a Filipino-based VA, is that we will design the task and we will brief the task and we will expect something in return for that as an output. It's quite dictated to by us, which requires us to think about that and design the process ourselves and then train somebody to do it instead of us. Whereas if you want to remove that thinking time from your brain and ask somebody else to do that for you, working with that dynamic with your VA won't deliver that for you. So you need to think about perhaps working with someone in the UK, or, as I say, a professional, experienced EA or VA. Happy to have any other learnings or findings on that, but I definitely would say that. So I started talking about how, then I got to the point of, okay, I've onboarded her, we've talked about how we communicate. So there's a few things that I want to share about that, and I'll share my screen in just a sec. So we decided to start with, we had WhatsApp, and then we had a weekly Skype. All of her briefs were still done as briefs and briefed to her on video with a backup document and shared on Trello. But then I realised quite quickly that 2 things were wrong with that system. Having a weekly call meant that she was saving up queries for the weekly call, when actually a message or a quick note on Trello solves it, unblocks the challenge, and she can move on within the same day. So I would, if you want to have a weekly call, just be careful how you frame that. What's the expectation for that call, and what's the expectation for what happens in between? The other thing that we are moving away from now is from WhatsApp to Trello only, because, or we have done that really, because that way the question that comes in from Mary, if I brief Mary on something and she doesn't quite understand it, instead of WhatsApping me, I have Trello on my phone. So if she's got a question, she can comment or ask it in that Trello card. I'll show you my Trello now, so that any question is related to the necessary task. Sensitive, I didn't answer the question on sensitive data. So the due diligence was done by the agency. Sensitive, I haven't quite trusted. So bit by bit, I am giving her more and more access to my systems. She has my logons to most of my, all my emails, most of my tools, but I haven't given her my bank details yet, and I could, but I just feel a bit nervous about that. So I just need to, she has access to my Expensify, to my Xero, but not my bank. But I know other people feel more comfortable with that. So I'm just going to share my screen. Oh, I'm just going to get Trello up, and then I'm going to share my screen and talk about how we communicate. Share screen. So this is my Trello with Mary. Lots of people do it in different ways, but this is how we've done it. So we've got a system whereby if something is created but not yet briefed to her, or then it gets a new card in here. If something's briefed and she needs to do it, she understands what she needs to do, or if something doesn't require a briefing conversation, it's a very simple task, it just goes in here. And you can see, where's one? Here. I'll hold on. Then once she's doing it, it goes into here, so I know the status. Once she's done it, she moves it to here, and I review it. If these need updating, actually, because they're in the wrong lists. Once I'm happy with it, it goes to done, or it gets archived. And if there's something that Mary's done that requires me to do an action off the back, it goes in my to-dos. Again, some of these are in the old list. So I'll show you an example of a card. So originally, I've briefed Mary on a task. I've attached the information that she needs, bank statements. Often there's a briefing document if I've written a process, step-by-step process in it. I've got a bit lazy with this one actually, because I wrote her step-by-step process here instead of in a briefing document. So I need to turn that into a briefing document. And then every time she's got a question, hi, I've done this. I've added this where I've got some points for clarification. Please, can you add notes to the last column and send them back to me? So I know that she's not WhatsApping me saying, I've done the bank sheet, I've got some questions. She's saying in the task, she's put her query related to the task, and we were talking about that last night. So that's how we do it. And I know a lot of you use Trello, but I've just added her as the person to this. I've added the due, you can add the due date to when something is required, add the attachments, etc. So that's how I brief her. So now we speak, we have these, we literally message each other when we need to. I know that she won't reply if she can't, and she will if she can, and the same works both ways. And if we need to, we still have an agreed window of 5 o'clock on a Sunday to set me up for the week, where if we've got anything that we haven't managed to unblock through messages, we speak on a Sunday afternoon. And if we haven't spoken for a while, we just speak, because I wouldn't really want to go more than sort of 3 weeks as a maximum before speaking with her, because otherwise she becomes in that transactional category instead of that relational category. So I'm just going to share a briefing document with you as well. So the way that I brief her on a task, as you saw, if I'm lazy, I'll just do my step-by-step process in a Trello card, which is an error. Always follow your own process. because I've learned the hard way that it's less clear. So here's an example of a brief. So I either, if it's hard, I'll do it myself and record it and put the link to the video in the Trello card, or I'll write it. If it doesn't need a video, it just needs a little step by step. Here's one that was inspired by Vicky and B, actually. So Vicky and B shared their filing structure a couple of weeks ago, and said that they'd come up with like a filing hierarchy for their company. So that's what I've now got. Thank you for the idea. So I've briefed Mary. So let me just, oh, you probably can't see that, can you? Let me share this. So this is what a brief, one of my briefs for Mary looks like. So it literally says, this is the task. It's about systems, and this is the task. So we might say VA brief marketing, this is the task, or VA brief finance, this is the task. So then it literally says, my objective is to do this, the output. So clearly saying the output that I want is this. And then this was a very simple brief because it was just creating my filing hierarchy. So I just told her what I wanted it to do and told her what I wanted it to look like and told her where she should save it and what she should do next. But that's a typical brief. It will always say what the objective is, so she understands why it's important what she's doing, what the output is, so it's clear when I'm like, you know, those SMART objectives, whatever the acronym is, but one of them is that you're clear on what the output should be. So it can't be, she knows when it's right or wrong, basically, and she's on the right track. And she'll often half do something, send a screenshot and go, is this what you're thinking? And I'll go, yeah, that's exactly it. So, and then it's the detail. And then if there's that's a typical brief. And then if there's a timing around that, that just gets added to the deadline in Trello. So I'm going to stop sharing, check if there's any questions, and then come back. Yeah, Trello is the task management, Slack's the comms, similar. Trello is the task management, and well, I use Trello as the task related comms, but then video or sometimes a bit of WhatsApp, but Slack is probably way better. I know people use it with more effect. Yes, I do training videos for certain tasks if they're hard. So for example, oh, I did this morning when I made my Canva thing, I recorded me doing it and me talking about it in a Zoom call like this. I pretended that someone was on the call. I just created a meeting, recorded my meeting, and just talked her through. This is where you go to change the brand. This is where you go to get my brand Pantone colors. This is where, or reference colors. This is where you get this from. This is how you do this. And then I've saved that, and it will go in my systems folder or for her. And then when I need to brief her on creating a new document, I will link to that video guide as an example of how to use Canva to create that as a reminder for her, so she's got the resources next to her that she needs. I'm just reading that comment about CRM. I think that's going to be a really good tip, so thanks for the share, Ria. The last thing that I want to talk about, so that's talked about how we work together, so how I brief her, how we manage the workflow of tasks, and how we communicate on those. The last thing I wanted to talk about was remuneration. And again, this is very different depending on where you are in the country, in the world, where your task doer, person, whatever it is in the world. Sorry, I just wiggled the screen. So the way that Freedom Geek set me up as one of their clients was to use a time tracking app called Time Doctor. So every time, I think this is very Big Brother, but actually I don't use it in that way. It's very helpful. So Time Doctor allows her to press start whenever she's starting doing anything for me, research on the way to work, some desk work when she's at home. She'll just press start and stop, and it will track her time. And then at the end of each month, it will tell me how many minutes, hours she's worked, so I can correctly pay her. And it's so easy. We all do like this. I think we go, I'll just spend 5 minutes on this, and you end up spending half an hour, and you don't really realize how much time you're spending on something. It's the same for client work in my marketing job. But having Time Doctor removes the risk that she will, quote, she'll undervalue the amount of hours that she's put to something. Time Doctor actually screen grabs her screen every 9 minutes to check that she's not doing something that other than what she's supposed to be doing, but I think that's horrible and I just trust her, so I've never looked. So Time Doctor, and then I pay her an agreed hourly rate for that, and I pay her in 3 ways. I pay her their agreed hourly rate, and actually next week is her year anniversary with me, so I'll put it up for the second time. I put it up after 7 months actually, and then instead of 6, and then again I'll put it up next week because I'm really happy with her work. It's a very low paid job in our context, but it's okay for her, but I think it could still be better. So there are some tasks which I incentivize and say, if you do this particularly, you know, efficiently or effectively, or if it impacts my business, you know, periodically, then there will be incentives for that. So one thing that I incentivized was how many viewings I went on, because they were dependent on how many correct properties she'd shortlisted, and I wanted her to refine and get that process correct in understanding what she was shortlisting. So let's say she shortlisted 50 properties for me, but only 10 of them were worthy of me viewing. She got her bonus divided by 50. But then when she actually refined them and got better and better at shortlisting them, that bonus was only divided by less. So she got more of a bonus. It was a bit complicated, but that's what we decided would be a fair way for her to correctly do the task. So incentivization on top of her hourly rate, and then occasional bonuses is the third way that I pay her. So I know, like, when I've had specific singular tasks done, like my redesign of my PowerPoint template, I think I paid like $150 for the PowerPoint and Word document, but again, I briefed it very specifically, gave examples of what I liked, what I didn't like in others. So Claire's just made the point, like, you can't just hire someone and let them get on with it. That's absolutely true. But I think the more you pay for initiative, and rightly so, the more you can let someone get on with something, the less time you need to invest in it, and the more that costs, and the more time you can invest on being specific with that and directing, then the less time that other person will have to pay, and the less time that person will have to spend, and the less thought they'll have to put into it themselves. So there's kind of like a ratio there, definitely. I think that is pretty much everything that I wanted to share with you. But I would just sort of just end by just reiterating the questions around: do you want to work with someone ongoing or not? Do you want to work with someone on a relationship or a transactional basis? And do you want to kind of have someone really as part of your team growing with you? And I think those are some of the main questions you should ask. And also, how much time have you got to invest? The whole point of having a VA in the first place is to take the lower value or less business transforming tasks away from you, so that you can concentrate on the bigger things. So it's just about time and making sure that you're outsourcing the right things. So there's loads of comments. We should definitely start talking about those now. Where should I start? Does anyone want to? Let me go on grid view and see if anyone wants to just raise their hand and talk about something completely pressing. There's so many coming in. I think one thing that I know that time, I've talked a lot about how much time you invest in the relationship. I think it is time intensive, the way that I have approached it, and other people might have other perspectives to share. But I was doing those things anyway. So actually, let's say I was doing something every week, going through Rightmove every week. What I've actually done is I've done it once. I've done it 3 times actually. Once to show her, once to show her again, maybe once to record the materials. Now that means I've done it 3 times instead of every week. So in a month, I'm already winning on the time invested on that particular task, because I would have done it 4 and I've only had to do it 3 times. So if you compound that over 12, that's a huge amount of time saved in my business in a year on that one task alone. So if you kind of amplify that over everything, I think the initial outlay is overwhelming. It really, really is. But the impact is it's releasing to the equal and opposite effect. So definitely don't let that put you off.
Jess, hi, it's Carolina.
Hey.
Hey, one thing that people are asking over here is about what time do the VAs work? And we have a lady that has also just gone 1 year anniversary this week and also found it through Freedom Geek. And actually it worked because she's starting her own business during the day. It worked for her to be on our time. So she joins at 8 a.m. UK time and finishes at 4 p.m., which is like midnight for her or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So she just works every day, and we jump together with the whole team because we very often work remotely. We jump on a call at 8 a.m. Everyone. We have a stand-up taken from Agile Method.
Yeah.
And jobs are divided, and people decide how they're gonna work through task. And she joins that, and she's part of the team. She's not a VA. She was only a VA for about 2 weeks.
And then she was
became our office manager.
Yeah. So the questions around time.
Sorry?
Did you say that there's a question around time, or did you just?
When they are okay to work, you can decide like on case by case basis. She was happy to work in our hours.
Absolutely. I mean, Mary, for example, she's Filipino, but she lives in Bahrain, and so she's between 4 and 5 hours ahead, and she usually works a couple of hours during work because she doesn't always have a lot to do, and then she usually works a couple of hours after work after she put her daughter to bed. At the moment it's Ramadan, she's staying up later, so she's working later, so it's completely like she works around her other things, but we've managed each other's expectations around that, and I think that's the most important thing. Like, you've clearly got an 8 a.m. start, and then you go off and each do your thing, so that's the expectation set. 8 a.m. we check in, and then we go off and make it work. So I think as long as everybody just talk about it, just say when can you work, when's out of bounds for you, and respect each other's boundaries, and then work when you can. Would you use a VA to self-manage your properties? I know people do this. I think Mike and Victoria use a set of systems, not necessarily VA, but a set of systems which could be outsourced to somebody else to manage theirs. And I also know Sarah and Rob do the same. And Sarah and Rob use, from May Green, they use their VA to have an additional level of tenant relationship management communications on top of what their lettings manager does. You could. I think if you're self-managing, obviously you just need, the biggest question I would ask myself is, how am I making sure that between me and my other person, whether that's a VA or a freelancer or whatever, how would I make sure that the regulations were being followed compliantly? Because that's not something, that's what I trust my lettings manager for. So that would be my question. And then just make sure that you're comfortable with the process that you're deciding on, of how you're going to keep on top of everything. That's probably what I would say about that. What other questions? Should we just do like last question before we do win of the week? Ruth, does that sound okay to you? Just shout out if you've got your question. It's more, Louise, go, and V. 2 questions. Louise and Vicky, they were the first 2 hands I saw.
Okay, for mine, it's one of the concerns I have is some of the work that I would want doing is the back end of my website. And I've always, I can see the value of outsourcing to a VA, and from a different country you get better value rates. But there's for me, huge sensitivity, because they could cause so much damage, if they did 1 or 2 things wrong. And is that something that you've got involved with, or tested the water with, or experienced?
You know what? Not with my VA, but because of working in marketing, I have in that context. And did you build your website yourself?
I do an awful lot of the work myself, but I could really do without not doing that work myself and have someone else do it.
I think whether you're working with a coder or a developer or a VA, as long as they've got the skills and they understand the encryption necessary or the sensitivity, they should bring the right tools to do the job. So I probably wouldn't ask a VA without specific for that, because it's, you know, there's a big impact if that goes wrong. I would want to work with a freelance, whether it's, you know, dev or something. I would want to work with someone with specific skills, because, as you say, of the impact of that going wrong, I wouldn't want someone unskilled to work on that.
Can I just say something about that?
Nadia.
Hi, can I just say something about that? I've built my website and a few websites in the past, and you can have you can save a website and sort of have a live one and have one that you're working on, so that you could get them to work on the one that's not live, have the one that you have at the moment, check it, put that one live, and then kind of stagger it like that.
Yeah, on a staging link, so you can make the changes on the staging link before you're happy and broadcast them. Yeah, that's a really good point. V and B.
Yeah, thanks, Jess. I think more like a global question, because we hired a VA like 3 weeks ago now, I think. And one of the big questions we've had, and we still have, is it better to go for someone who wants to do a little bit of everything and wants to grow, or to have different people, so hiring multiple VAs? Because we got something for the marketing, for example. She really wants to do it, but I'm not sure that's her strength. But she's an accountant as a background, so she's really good for that for sure. So my question is, do you aim to get someone at first who can do a little bit of everything, or would you go straight for 2 different people with big strengths in different areas?
I think it depends on what you're trying to do in your business. If you specifically want to grow a sales funnel, get a sales specialist, or if you specifically want to build a website, get a website person. But that's not a VA, that's someone that can help you with a contained project. What I would probably do in your case is actually get a marketing person who can, who your VA can communicate with, so that your VA can learn from the expert, so that the first time it's done correctly and in the best way it possibly can be, because you don't want average to replicate average, you want new to replicate brilliant. So I would get someone to do it brilliant the first time, a pro, and then they can, your VA can copy or learn from that particular specialism. So you want to bring the right skills into the business in the first place. That's what I would do.
We're not specialists either in marketing.
But you can hire someone. I can help you either through, if you want, we can chat after, and either through my own marketing network or from people like an outsourced platform. I can help you find the right person for that job.
Thanks, Jess.
Great session. Thanks, Jess.
Good. Ruth, should we do wins of the week?
Yeah, let's crack on with wins of the week. We've got probably about 5 or 10 minutes left, and love to hear. I know some of you haven't spoken yet and you're desperate to speak this week, or you're building up that courage to speak, and we really want to hear from you guys. So
can I just say before we move on, if there were so many questions, I'm really sorry if I didn't catch them all. Just message me and I'll see what I think, or just share in the group any tips or anything. That's all I wanted to say.
Hello, I'm Zoe. I'll go if that's okay. Sorry you can't see me, guys. Hopefully I'll be able to sort that out in the next session. But I just want to say I'm a super newbie, so I'm totally in awe of listening to everything that everyone's saying. Jess, that was a super excellent session. Thank you. Took lots of tidbits from that, which is really great. So just want to say thank you for having me on the group. Really excited to be part of it, and super excited to see so many women really pushing the boundaries. So thanks for having me.
welcome, Zoe.
Thank you.
Has anyone got any wins for this week? Just jump on.
I have. And it was actually from doing more social media activity, like Claire Norwood taught us to, so that's good. I got an investor on board who wants to invest in one of our commercial projects, and another project that we've got about to start in the pipeline. We've got a care provider who I think wants to take that long term, which is brilliant, because then we're basically, refurbing it with that end user lined up. So yeah, they were my wins. Thanks.
That's amazing.
Can I?
Can you hear me? Can I say, yep. I've got, so we had an investor that our term expired January, but we could pay them back early and they agreed to that. That's brilliant. So we save quite a substantial amount every month. And then we've also sale agreed on a property this week. So that's really good. We're going to convert to an HMO. We were going to finish with our HMOs, but with everything that's happening, the opportunity came up. We thought, let's go for it. Yeah, happy. Cheers.
I'll go. If
Oh, we just lost you.
if there's anyone else.
You keep freezing.
So this week we had two live. So we just had a couple lease renewals this week. So they signed up for another 6 to 8 months. So we got another couple tenants in.
Sarah, it's saying that your bandwidth is low on the screen and that's why we can't hear you.
Oh.
It's kind of cutting in and out.
Okay, no worries.
You want to try again?
Okay.
Want to try again?
Yeah. We had a couple lease renewals this week. So that was our win. Hopefully you can hear that one now. Sorry.
I'll go. I got approached by a couple of potential new investors this week. So early in the lead funnel, for want of a better word. Yeah, nice to have two new potential relationships to see if we're the right fit for on an investor perspective.
Brilliant, Jess. Can I go next? So our commercial to resi project down in Plymouth that is closed because of the lockdown, 21 units. We had 12 reservations just before lockdown. We lost one because somebody lost his job, but since lockdown has happened, we've had 2 new reservations and we've got a list of about 10 people who are desperate to get in as soon as it's over. So, and everyone else is sticking with us, you know, they're just waiting, happy to proceed. So it feels like, I feel like when lockdown finishes, the world will start up again and, you know, we'll just kind of pick up where we left off as much as possible.
Can I go next? Hi, everyone. So my husband and I have been working on a workshop and webinar to help fundraisers create better quality investor packs. And we've been putting a lot of effort into it. And just this week, we've had our first workshop attendee booked on, and that's been a really exciting feeling.
Ruth, can I, if there's space at the end, I've decided I've got a better win, but I'll shut up. I've already been once.
I've got one. So in some of my HMOs, my students have gone on rent strike for no real apparent reason. I think what happened was the university gave 3 months rent slack for a whole bunch of students who were on campus, and so that had a knock-on effect into the private rented sector, and they expected the same from landlords. So the student union produced a document so they could fill it all in, petitioning to their landlords that they should also get 3 months free rent, and all their student loans had come in. None of them were financially vulnerable, so it was really difficult because you're trying to just, you know, tease it all out. And I got an email from a letting agent yesterday saying they'd all kind of like admitted defeat and they paid their fee. So it was woohoo, hurrah.
I've got one, if I can. So at the beginning of this week, I took a bold step of like publishing like an expertise guidance, which was basically our client's guide to sustainable development. Thinking that was just going to put out a great piece of work that I was doing anyway, but I've had really good, like huge number of downloads of the documents, and quite a few local London local authority boroughs have contacted us to assist them with their sustainability guidance. So that was unexpected, but really cool. Thank you.
I think Claire Norwood's got another one she wants to share.
No, Helen, I've shared mine, so you share it. Go on.
Okay, it's not exactly a win, but I'm sharing on Claire's behalf. Claire has had a win this week, another win this week, because she's been so brave. I don't know if any of you, well, some of you shared the story, so thank you very much for that. She's been incredibly brave. We recorded a video with the lovely Marina, Real Life of Brands, who we had an amazing workshop with that I know many of you were on, but about kind of rogue mentors. And there's a kind of more general theme about kind of people being ripped off in the industry, but we've had great responses. More people have come forward that have had similar experiences with said person.
In this group, we've had messages from people who've experienced similar things, and it means so much to hear that. Just knowing that you're not alone.
And that's our message. We just want people to know they're not alone. We want people to start talking about it so that we can kind of steer people away from the unethical people and towards like people in this group that care about people's money, want to do the right thing by investors. So that's our little win.
That was amazing, by the way. Thank you so much for sharing that on social media, and it was really useful and so great to hear the honesty. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you, Tara. And if everyone could share as much as possible and just to get that message out there, would be really grateful.
And that leads really nicely onto next week's topic, which is Helen's going to be talking all about, from the eyes of an investor, what us developers need to look out for, what we should be looking at, and what our investors want from us. Helen, do you want to say a little bit about that?
Yes, I forgot it was me next week, so but I'll be working hard on my content this week. It's something I really love talking about, and a lot of you ladies do a lot of what I talk about kind of already, but I've done a lot of posts with the lovely Property Jammer guys and Joe over the past, it wasn't this week, I think it was the previous week, but about kind of investing and working with investors and what they look for, and communication and building trust. And I'm going to go into all those things kind of a little bit more. As with all these topics that we cover, we could spend kind of a whole morning's workshop on it. But if there's any like real key questions, drop me a note, message me, whatever, and I'll try and address those. But I just want to make it really kind of relevant for you guys.
So super looking forward to that. Thank you. Any last wins before we all enjoy the sun?
I've got one. Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. The project 7 in a row, the very long project 7 in a row. So we finally finished the first phase for the rip out, and that's a huge win compared to this project that was a bit long. So that's a big win.
Champagne in the fridge for tonight.
Yeah. I've got one actually. I'd forgotten about it. We bought Fingas Steadings at auction, and it had 13 3-bedroom lapse planning. So it's on the edge of the village. So although it's a big piece of land, we were hoping to extend. However, our architect went and saw that there used to be a courtyard there. So it looks like we'll be able to increase it to 22 terraced houses. So that's a good win.
Wow.
I've got one, if it's okay to share still. So I'm really new to my journey. So I'm just building my buy-to-lets for like a foundation. But the first time this week, I've had an agent approach me to say that there's a landlord selling and they want to give me first refusal on it. So, which is the first time. So it's like really good that relationship's built to where I'm getting first refusal on properties. So really pleased.